Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. We're talking about the connected classroom, and today I did a Google search on student relationships. What do you think I found when I did that? Again, I can't see the chat, so please, yeah, type in some answers there, your ideas. Facilitating, improving, yeah, okay, that was there. Well, what I did find was this. These are the first things that came up. Empathy, student relationships, everything was about teacher-student relationships. I mean, I had to go through pages and everything was how to make good relationships with your students, how students and teachers relate to each other. Everything was about that. There's almost nothing on student-student relationships. But we know as teachers, the way that they connect to each other has a really important effect on the way the class goes. But nobody's doing research on it. Johnson said, this is one of the most neglected factors of learning, or something like that. Sorry, I can't see my notes in this keynote here, so I can't remember exactly what the quote was. But he said it's one of the most neglected factors of learning in our research, how students connect to each other. So right away, I'd like to start with a discussion. You can use the chat or please unmute yourself and share ideas. For 4 minutes, what are the advantages of having a connected classroom and where the students know each other and they get along and they're friends or something like that? Okay. So please share your ideas on that.
They more readily share their ideas.
Mm-hmm. Is that Catherine? Thank you, Catherine.
The Japanese word I like is yaruki. There's just more enthusiasm and more energy, and it creates a buzz when they know some things about each other. I get frustrated when they're not even talking to each other in their first language before class starts.
My experience at my school is students who don't have friends at school quit.
Oh.
So we always have, well, we didn't this year, it was canceled, but we usually have a welcome seminar for students to make friends with each other. Some kind of ice-breaking activities. Where
What kind of a school do you teach in? I think
it's an all-women's 4-year college.
that's both of those things are important. It's a college and it's
Mhm.
all women. Both of those are kind of important, I think.
There was actually a seminal study at a girls' school in New York that also was analyzing girls basically dropping out and escaping, and the social factor was the main factor driving that. So to connect with Linda's add-on, and to piggyback off, I think it was Greg's comment. In the language classroom, there's also the increased opportunity for students to talk to one another using the target language, especially in study abroad contexts.
By the way, do I pronounce your name Mikal? Is that right?
You can just call me Mike. That's
okay.
easiest.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Curtis, I would like to add here that to me, being part of a connected classroom is just feels like having a safety net, counting on other people, not only to feel safe, but to go through the rough parts when they do come by, which is something that we have to count on when we are on the learning journey, right?
Yes. So students, yeah, I like that, the safety net, that it engenders more interaction. I like what Linda had to say, that attendance is related to that. Yeah. Please keep going. We still got a couple minutes here. I just want to hear your ideas. And Greg's.
In Japan, students make lifelong friends from their school. And if they don't have friends from school, they often don't have friends through life.
I think that goes with romantic partners too. I've noticed, I've
Not
talked to a lot of students.
as much, but yes.
I think one of the things that I found in classrooms is when the students, when they're really connected and have those good relationships, they encourage each other and help each other to achieve a lot of the goals that we're trying to get through. Like if there's like difficult phrases or difficult, maybe not specifically language, but like ideas they want to get out, they can help each other and really encourage them to keep talking, keep speaking, keep trying.
Yeah, it's more than just safety. It's their way of interacting is actually helping each other learn. Yeah. Mohammed, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that they have this feeling of belonging to a bigger community when they are connected to each other. So that brings us the safety and the connection that they have with each other, which is helping them in the process of learning. So the sense of belonging to a kind of bigger community is the key factor, I guess, here.
Yes. Okay. So you mentioned all the points that I think, that I can end the presentation right now. So I was looking over the research and you've already mentioned a lot of this stuff, but what do we know about students who do not have a friend? Lower grades, less engaged. This is from Junoven's research in 2019. Worse attendance. There you go. There's what Linda was talking about. Poorer working memory and poorer focus because they're using some of their mental resources to pay attention to the other people in the class, things like that. So they can't focus as much on the particular topic. A decline in mental health. By the way, on the poorer working memory and focus, yeah, okay, I'll get to that later. But the decline in mental health, let me get into that in a little bit of detail here. There's a dangerous year for Japanese students. In high school and university, there's one year that's particularly dangerous. Now, the normal rates of depression in Japanese schools is about 6% for high school students and university students. But there's one particular year where it shoots up to 20%. And it's only 10.2% for men, which is still double the normal, but it's 28.4% for women. So women have almost three times the likelihood of having a major depressive episode as defined by the DM, whatever that is. Yeah. And of course, we know depression is related to suicide, and suicide in Japan is the top cause of student death. So when is that dangerous year? Anybody like to throw out a theory?
Probably
The first year.
First year.
Close. The first year of
Second
what?
year.
Of high school? No, university,
school.
right?
First
University.
year of university.
First year of high school is dangerous, by the way, too, but the first year of university especially, but you have to shift back 6 months. It's actually the last 6 months of high school and the first 6 years of university are the dangerous year. Because
First
the last 6 months of high school, they're doing entrance exams, and they're worried about failure. Then they come into this sort of hostile, cold environment without any friends. And a lot of times, a lot of them are moving away from home for the first time, but that's the dangerous year. You got it. The last 6 months of high school and the first 6 months of university. And talking about suicide, what are the major factors for preventing student suicide? I mean, that's probably the saddest thing that can happen to any teacher, to have one of your students commit suicide. I can't think of anything worse. And the major factors for preventing suicide are not the counseling center. In one study, only 19% of the students who are suicidal or committed suicide, I'm not sure which, actually sought counseling at the university center. And research in Japan shows the major factor to prevent depression and suicide is a caring teacher and having a friend. And you kind of know that, and I've always sort of worried about, well, we're not supposed to help students, because we might be making things worse because we're not trained and not expert. But I did talk to a psychotherapist in a Kyoto conference just last week. She said, I think that's mainly a myth. The role of the teacher is still really important, and you don't have to necessarily hold back. You're not going to be like prescribing drugs or anything, but we do play that big part in their mental health. I think we can add one more thing to not having a friend, more likely to commit suicide. Well, what are the advantages of having friends? And these are related to study, and you've already mentioned a lot of these too, but Galanis and Carmack found better behavior. When students' friends are in class, they're kind of more likely to model better behavior to each other and partake in it. And I've seen cases where there's like a little group of friends who act kind of worse because they're adolescents, but generally students will behave better if they're with their friends. More willing to participate. Yeah, because everybody else says, I want to get on this too. And there's a reward from it, of course. Sharing learning. Oh, I heard this really interesting thing in this class and you were asking, but let me tell you about this. You know, sharing learning with each other. So they actually teach each other to some degree. And of course, they have a greater willingness to help each other. I didn't get that. Well, here, I got it. Let me show you. So this connected classroom is a huge effect for learning. And I think we've really not shown any light on that, as Johnson said. It's something we kind of miss. And I'm thinking about even my own case. When I got my doctoral degree in the beginning of the century, I belonged to what was called the international cohort. The international cohort, which was in my university, the students from abroad were all working together, all got together for 2 weeks on campus in Florida. And being Japanese, I knew that we had to kind of get to know each other first. That was important. So we set up trips on boats together and we all really bonded before the classes started. And that made a huge difference in the quality of our discussion and our ability to focus on the topic. I noticed other classes I was in where students would just be thrown together from all different spheres. People are telling mainly war stories, who I am kind of stories, and not really talking about the topic. And the teachers noticed that too. They said, our cohort was much more engaged and we seemed smarter. We seemed much more into the courses. And again, it's because we bonded, we became connected before the courses started in this program. Well, if you're interested in neuroscience, I'm going to go into just general discussion now. But if you're interested in neuroscience, if you don't know it already, we have a lot of our authors here, but we produce a magazine that connects brain sciences to language teaching. And we just had an issue this year on student-to-student relationships, which is why I chose this topic. So finally, how can we make a connected classroom? Let's use the rest of our time just to talk about that. And there's the, if you want to hold up your cell phone there and subscribe. If you're not subscribed yet, please do. What's our role in helping students connect, make friends? I'll give you one from, I'll start with one. I used to have the class party at the end of the semester because we're saying goodbye to each other. I started teaching in a women's university. And again, the connection for women seems to be even more important than for men. I started having the class party after the first class, so they could bond to each other. And it seemed to make a difference for the way the rest of the class went, the rest of the semester. Okay, over to you.
One of the things I find useful in making these type of connections, and I didn't really learn this as a teacher, I learned this as a student, was giving them a shared trial or a shared goal, a shared a task, or something that seems monumental to an individual, but as a group they could come together and accomplish it. And I find that really helps them to make connections. And to share a personal story, that's how I met my best friend in high school. I had a class where we had to make music for some project, and neither one of us knew anything about music. So that really helped us bond together trying to figure this out. And I apply that nowadays to the classroom. A lot of the communicative tasks we give is sharing things that maybe they're not used to, or that they're not used to doing in English, especially.
Yeah, Greg, sure. You guys can just, you don't need to raise your hand.
I think sometimes we have to model the behavior that we'd like the students to follow. It's really frustrating for me the times when I've walked down the hall and I've seen a teacher taking attendance by going down the name list, looking down at a sheet, saying the name. And if a student says hi, they put a check mark, and if no one says anything, they put an X. If the teachers, I mean, I know sometimes logistics is difficult. You've got a class of 300 or 100, you maybe don't know. But if the teachers don't model that knowing each other's name is important, then the students won't take that upon themselves either.
Where I work, we have a no homework policy. So usually at the end, one part of the lesson is devoted in homework or working with the activity book or the workbook. And in most of the cases, I think in all cases, what we actually do is that we have groups of students working together and co-teaching one the other, assisting one the other in the, and you can see then something quite magic, that you can see that learning is happening. You can see the way it happens. Simply because one student may ask a question and the other student may get involved in replying and things like that. So it seems to be quite effective.
Yeah, the power of mentoring is something I've been interested in recently because of Matthew Lieberman and his great videos on the social brain. What about activities? What can we do? You know, we have like, well, introduce yourself the first day, but how can we go beyond that? What are some good activities we can use in the classroom?
Yeah. Can I add something here specifically about the activities? Exactly, because I used to do this breaking the ice activities on the first days or something like that. But then we decided to shift this to a kind of online platform. So now the students are introducing themselves in the kind of blog entry. So they have this chance to introduce themselves, making comments on each other's posts, but it's just an introduction, nothing serious. It's just where they're from, what their hobbies are, or stuff like this. So they can comment on each other's posts. They already form a group of interest, like the music they like, or something like that, even before you start the semester. So that is something nice that I got the benefit from when I did it at the beginning of the semester. The other very detailed thing that I think can help is, I don't know if you are using Zooms for your teachings or not, but one of the options of Zoom is allowing participants to join the meeting before the host. So that even a simple click can give them this opportunity to bond with each other, talk to each other before even you are in the meeting. So that is something that you can easily do.
Yeah, sorry to piggyback on that. One of the things that I like to do, especially in Zoom, is we would have a block of time for our classes, but after that, we would just leave the rooms open and say, you can just chat for, 30 to 45 minutes. Now that you're all together, just hang out. You haven't had a time to get into the classroom and talk to each other. So take this time and get to know each other and have a chat.
I just added a first class starting activity that I do, where I have students that are introducing themselves. They have to interview somebody else, fill in a chart, then share that with the people in their groups and maybe put them all together and make a class album. A little bit more in depth there.
On the topic of activities, one of my favorite things to do is games. Just play some games, make some teams. Just being on a team together really forms those bonds in a way that I'm not a sports guy by any means, and that's one of the things that I think would have improved my teaching is if I was on a sports team when I was younger. But giving them those chances to work together as a team to do whatever the task is, it helps them build those bonds and make connections with each other.
Yes, if you have some games that you can drop in the chat, please do. I will too. There's this, I do information gaps. that are based on students working in pairs to solve a mystery. There's like 3 files I just put in, like a murder mystery or something, by sharing information with information gaps. And when they work on something like this and they succeed, they bond. They have a friend, you know?
Last year, when we first went on Zoom, I didn't know what to do with students who didn't know each other, and I just let them go into their breakout rooms, and I didn't care what language they spoke, you know, if they used English or what. And I just let them get to know each other at first. And then when class was over, I just turned the Zoom over to them and let them have it. And they could stay as long as I made one of them a host, and they could stay as long as they want. And 2 hours later, I wanted to open up the link and they were still there.
Especially during this time when they can't get together. Yes, I had the
Right,
exact same experience.
right.
These
And
boys,
last,
yeah.
last year we started late, and so we had to stay home during Golden Week. And I had classes during Golden Week, so we could finish earlier in July. And everybody showed up for the classes, and I just let them get to know each other.
Linda, you just said something that's a great tip for me. I tell students, you can stay here and have lunch together if you want. I'll leave, but you can stay here. But they all leave when I say it's over the end of the
Yeah.
class. But if you
One
make one of them
time,
a host, if you make one
one
of them
time
a
I
host,
said I was leaving and I turned my camera off, and I meant to leave, but something happened, and it was just wonderful sitting there listening to them. But yeah, if you say you're going to leave, you probably should leave and make the
Yeah, I
students.
usually just tell them I'm putting off my camera and my mic. I'm going to do some other stuff, but if you have a question, text me, and I
Yeah.
let them do their thing. And it's
And
amazing.
It's
I also eavesdrop.
it's wonderful to listen to them sometimes.
oh, this is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the last year or so, definitely this school year, I've started doing a big project that requires different kinds of skills for students to use. So this year I'm having students make a video game because I have a little bit of experience in game design. So what I've done is I've set up, like, we need these teams to make this video game, and it allows students to get together based on their skills and based on their experiences. Like the students who are really good at art can start getting together and talking, and the ones who are good at music or programming and all of that good stuff. So having like this big project for everybody to work on that requires them to use their individual skills and kind of work together in that skill set really helps them too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think if we look at all the different methods, I think probably the rise of the communicative approach was one of the big steps in putting more attention on the learner experience. Everything before that seemed to be oriented towards the language. We have to teach this first and then this, you know, but suddenly the communicative experience, and students like that. Students want to talk, they want to share, you know, things with each other. And we have to look for any way we can do that. And I think within the different approaches that we have in our field, I think TBLT is the top one. It's the hardest to manage in a lot of ways. That's probably the top one for helping students bond, especially those first-year students. And I had an interesting experience. Another thing that's a really good technique is what are called dyadic circles, or actually lines in my class. I teach a class of 60, and I have 3 rows of 10 pairs of students facing each other. They do some really low-level interaction. I say, okay, change partners. They change it and they do it again. They change it and do it again. So doing the same kind of interaction 4 or 5 times, so they master it. It's good that way, but they get to talk to each other. And there's this one class I taught when we were on, there's one class I taught when we were live for last semester with first-year students, where I did dyadic circles so many times. They had 9 different partners in the class, At the end of the class, I always pass out this little communicard to write down their comments. And it was 3 times as many students said this was one of the best classes I've ever attended on that card, even though the content was no different than the rest. And it's because they could talk to more people. So another question, what about letting them speak in Japanese? Maybe not just the first time, what about every class? We're going to close in 60 seconds, but anybody have a comment on that, on speaking in their native language? Is that necessarily a bad thing?
I don't think so.
I let them do it. Especially, you know, when time is stressful and it's important to form that bond, and which is what this is all about, you know. So at the beginning, I definitely let them do it.
I've come around to that thinking too. It's part of getting them into the right brain state to learn, if they're chatting instead of doing the task.
You can do a task like that in a Google Doc. And I had all the students, if it's a small class, all the students introduce themselves, you know, text-wise first, and the next week they put pictures of their family and pets, pictures of their achievements. And we took 3 weeks to build this document, and everybody felt like they really knew each other by.
Well, thank you, everybody that was in my session. That was brilliant. Carolyn, can we go back into the same group for another 25 minutes?
No, we can't. We have 3 more speakers, Curtis. And everybody wants to hear them